I woke up at 4:20 in the morning to find my boyfriend kissing a stranger from Craigslist in our living room, and when I confronted him, he moved her into our bed. I'm 24 years old, and until a month ago, I thought I knew what my life looked like. I had a boyfriend of almost 5 years, an apartment we shared, two cats who were basically our children, and a routine that felt safe. Boring, maybe, but safe. The kind of safe where you don't question things because questioning things means admitting something might be wrong. His name was Derek. Tall, kind of lanky, with this perpetual stubble that he claimed was intentional but was really just laziness. We'd met in college, one of those terrible house parties where the music's too loud and everyone's pretending the cheap vodka tastes good. He'd made me laugh. That was enough back then.
5 years is a long time.
Long enough that you stop noticing the small things that used to bother you. Long enough that I love you becomes something you say automatically, like bless you after a sneeze. Long enough that you start planning a future without actually discussing whether you both want the same one. We lived in a cramped two-bedroom apartment on the second floor of a building that smelled like curry and cigarettes, depending on which neighbor was home. Derek's son from a previous relationship, Mason, visited every other weekend. He was 7, obsessed with dinosaurs, and honestly one of the best parts of my life. I'd gotten good at making dinosaur-shaped pancakes. I'd learned all the names: Ankylosaurus, Pachycephalosaurus, Parasaurolophus. Mason would correct me when I got the pronunciations wrong, and I'd pretend to be offended, and he'd giggle. That weekend, Mason was visiting. It was a Friday night, and Derek had been acting weird all day. Not bad weird, just distracted. Checking his phone a lot. Smiling at the screen in that way people do when they're texting someone they like. "Who are you talking to?" I'd asked, casual, while I was chopping vegetables for dinner. "Oh, just this person I met online. Might come over later." I looked up from the cutting board. "Like, tonight?"
Yeah.
"Is that cool?" I wanted to say no. I wanted to ask why he was inviting strangers over when his kid was here, when I was here, when it was supposed to be our quiet weekend. But I didn't. Because that's what 5 years does. It teaches you to swallow the objections that feel too small to defend. "Sure," I said. "Whatever." She showed up around 8. Her name was Bree. I remember because it was such a specific name, the kind you don't forget even when you want to. She was maybe 21, 22. With dyed blonde hair and false eyelashes and this breathy way of talking that made everything sound like a question. She said Derek had posted on Craigslist looking for friends. "Just friends," Derek clarified, looking at me. "Bree's new to the area." "Cool," I said, because what else do you say? We all sat in the living room for a while. Mason was on the couch playing on Derek's old tablet, headphones in. Derek and Bree talked about music, about the city, about some band I'd never heard of. I sat there scrolling through my phone, contributing the occasional hum when it felt appropriate. Around 10, I was exhausted. I worked early shifts at a coffee shop, up at 5 most mornings to open, dealing with people who hadn't had caffeine yet and thought that was my fault. I excused myself, said goodnight, and went to the bedroom. Derek barely looked up. I heard them talking in the living room, their voices low and punctuated by laughter. I heard the front door open and close, Bree leaving, I assumed. I rolled over, pulled the blanket up to my chin, and fell asleep thinking about whether we needed to buy more milk. At 4:20 a.m., the cats lost their minds. We had 2, Peanut and Butter, because Derek thought he was hilarious. Peanut was a tabby with anxiety issues who hated closed doors. Butter was a black cat who screamed for food at inappropriate hours. They both came barreling into the bedroom, yowling like the apartment was on fire. "Jesus," I mumbled, shoving Peanut off my chest. "What?" They kept at it, meowing, pawing at the door, acting like something was desperately wrong. I lay there for a minute, trying to will them into silence, but Butter jumped on my face, and I gave up. "Fine," I muttered, kicking off the blanket. "Fine." I was thirsty anyway. I'd gone to bed without water, and my mouth tasted like I'd been chewing cotton. I shuffled out of the bedroom in my pajamas, an old t-shirt and shorts, and headed toward the kitchen. The hallway was dark. The living room light was on. I turned the corner and froze. Derek was on the couch. Bree was on the couch. Specifically, Bree was on Derek's lap, and they were kissing. Not a peck. Not a friendly European double-cheek thing.
Kissing.
His hands were in her hair. Her hands were on his chest. They were fully, actively making out in our living room while I slept 20 feet away. I stood there, staring, my brain refusing to process what I was seeing. It felt like one of those dreams where everything is just slightly wrong and you can't figure out why. Except I was awake. I was definitely awake. I walked into the kitchen. Loudly. I opened the cabinet. Bang. Pulled out a glass. Clatter. Turned on the faucet full blast. Filled the glass. Turned off the faucet. The silence was deafening. When I looked back into the living room, they were sitting on opposite ends of the couch. Bree was examining her nails. Derek was staring at the TV, which wasn't even on. I drank my water.
Put the glass in the sink.
Walked back to the bedroom, without saying a word. I sat on the edge of the bed, hands shaking, heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. My brain was screaming at me to do something, say something, throw something, react, but my body just sat there, frozen. 5 years. We'd been together for almost 5 years. I waited. 1 minute.
2. 5.
I kept expecting to hear the front door close. Kept expecting him to come back to the bedroom and pretend nothing had happened. Kept expecting some kind of explanation, even a lie, anything. Nothing. At 4:30, I got up and walked back to the living room. They were still there, sitting apart now, but there. Derek looked up when I walked in. "It's 4 in the morning," I said. My voice sounded calm. Eerily calm. "Oh." He glanced at Bree. "Yeah. She doesn't have a car. The buses aren't running yet. So you can drive her home then." He shook his head, and I swear to God, he had the audacity to look inconvenienced. "I'm too drunk to drive."
See?
Everything's fuzzy. He opened his eyes wide, demonstrating his alleged drunkenness by staring at me with perfectly clear, focused eyes. I just can't tell.
I felt something snap inside me.
Not loudly. Quietly. Like a rubber band pulled too tight for too long. "It sure didn't look fuzzy to me," I said, "when I saw you kissing her." His face didn't change. Bree looked at the floor. "She'll go home when the buses run again," Derek said, like that was reasonable. Like that was the problem. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the remote at his head. I wanted to drag Bree out by her hair and change the locks and set all his stuff on fire. But Mason was asleep on the couch in the next room, the same couch they'd just been making out on, and I couldn't wake him up. Couldn't let him see this. So I went back to the bedroom and closed the door and cried as quietly as I could. I called my mom. It was 4:45 in the morning, and I called my mom, sobbing into the phone, trying to explain what had just happened. "Pack your things," she said immediately. "Come home. Right now." "I can't," I whispered. "Mason's here. I can't just." "Then pack quietly." "But you're leaving. Today." I started pulling things out of drawers. Clothes, toiletries, my laptop, chargers. I grabbed trash bags from under the sink and started filling them with my life. My hands were shaking so badly, I kept dropping things. Around 5:30, Derek came back into the bedroom. "Can I sleep in here?" he asked. I stared at him. "Are you serious? I'm tired. Where else am I supposed to sleep? Out there with your friend." "Come on," he said, already climbing into bed. "Don't be like that." I should have said no. Should have told him to sleep on the floor, in the bathtub, in the dumpster outside for all I cared. But I was so exhausted, physically, emotionally, existentially exhausted, that I just turned over and faced the wall. He fell asleep in minutes. I could hear him snoring. I waited until 6 a.m., until I was sure he was out cold, and then I started carrying bags to my car. Quietly. 3 trips, 4, 5. I packed everything I could fit. Clothes, books, my bathroom stuff, the framed photo of my grandmother, the blanket I'd brought when we moved in together. I left the furniture. Left the dishes. Left the life we'd built. Around 7:30, Mason woke up. I heard him moving around, heard Derek get up, heard the TV turn on. I stayed in the bedroom, packing, trying to avoid the inevitable conversation. Derek came in around 8. Are you leaving? I didn't look up from the duffel bag I was filling. Take her home and we'll talk about it. If you're leaving, why haven't you packed up your stuff? I have, I said, gesturing at the bags. But I can't get to the Xbox when she's sleeping in front of it. There was a pause. Then, so I'll move her to the bed. I stopped, turned, looked at him. Excuse me? You're leaving, he said, like this was obvious. So why should she? He walked out. I heard him talking to Bree. Heard her giggle, actually giggle, as he led her into the bedroom. Our bedroom. She climbed into the bed I'd just been sleeping in, pulled the covers up, and closed her eyes. I stood in the hallway, holding a bag of my own clothes, watching a stranger settle into my bed, and I realized I was living in a nightmare where the rules didn't apply anymore. Mason woke up around 8:30. Sweet, oblivious Mason, who padded out in his dinosaur pajamas and asked if we could have pancakes. Sure, buddy, I said, forcing a smile. Pancakes sound great. So I made pancakes. I made pancakes while Bree slept in my bed and Derek hovered around me, watching everything I packed like I was going to steal the silverware. Are those my pills? He asked when I grabbed a bottle from the bathroom. No, I said through gritted teeth. They're mine. Hold on, what game is that? I held up the case. Skyrim. The one I paid for. But you bought it for me. I bought it and you started playing it. That doesn't make it yours. This went on for hours. Every item I touched, he questioned. Every bag I packed, he inspected. Like I was the criminal. Like I was the one who'd done something wrong. Bree woke up around noon. She came out of the bedroom, my bedroom, yawning and stretching, wearing one of Derek's t-shirts. She smiled at me like we were friends.
Morning, she said.
I didn't respond. I just kept packing. Mason wanted to show me his new drawing, a T-Rex eating a volcano, because why not? And I sat with him on the floor and admired it and told him he was incredibly talented, and the whole time Bree was on the couch scrolling through her phone, and Derek was watching me like a hawk. I finished packing around 2. I hugged Mason goodbye, told him I'd see him soon, a lie probably, but one I needed to tell him. He hugged me back, small arms tight around my neck, and asked if I was mad at his dad. No, sweetheart, I whispered. I'm just sad. Derek walked me to my car. Bree stayed inside. So that's it, he said. You're really leaving? I loaded the last bag into the trunk.
Yeah.
I'm really leaving. Because of her? It didn't mean anything. I turned to look at him. You moved her into our bed, Derek. While I was standing there. I thought you were leaving anyway. I was leaving because you cheated on me. And instead of apologizing, instead of asking her to go, instead of doing literally anything to show me you gave a single shit about our 5 years together, you moved her into our bed. You're overreacting. I laughed. It came out bitter and broken. I'm overreacting. Right. I got in the car. He stood there, hands in his pockets, looking almost confused. I'll get my name off the lease, I said through the open window. Don't contact me. What about the cats? Of course. Of course, that's what he asked about. I'll come back for them, I said. When you're not here. I drove away. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. I've been living with my mom for a month now. It's weird, I'm 24, sleeping in my childhood bedroom, surrounded by posters I hung when I was 16. But it's quiet. And it's safe. And nobody's kissing Craigslist strangers in the living room at 4 a.m. I went back for the cats 2 weeks ago. Derek wasn't there. I'd coordinated with his work schedule. Peanut and Butter were filthy, their litter box overflowing, their food bowls empty. I packed them up, took their supplies, and left. I'm still getting my name off the lease. The landlord's dragging his feet, and Derek keeps texting me about bills I apparently still owe even though I haven't lived there in a month. I've stopped responding. Sometimes people ask me if I miss him. If I regret leaving. I don't miss him. I miss the person I thought he was. I miss the 5 years I invested in someone who, when it came down to it, valued a stranger from the internet more than me. But I don't regret leaving. Not for a second. I got a text from Bree last week. No idea how she got my number. It said, Just so you know, he's doing the same thing to me. I blocked her number. Not my circus. Not my monkeys. Not anymore. My mom says I seem lighter now.
Happier.
I'm not sure I'd call it happiness yet. More like relief. Like I've been holding my breath for 5 years and I'm finally allowed to exhale. I'm looking for my own place. Something small. Somewhere the only people who get keys are people I actually trust. Somewhere I can leave a glass in the sink without someone interrogating me about whose glass it is. Peanut stopped having anxiety attacks. Butter still screams for food at 4 a.m., but now when I get up, the only people in my living room are me and 2 cats who actually give a damn. I learned that 5 years of history doesn't mean anything when someone shows you who they really are at 4:20 in the morning, and I learned I'm worth more than a man who'd trade me for a stranger without a second thought.